Welcome all to the Snail Trail 4x4 podcast. If you like going off-roading in Toyotas, wrenching on Toyotas, camping in Toyotas, and maybe even poking a little bit of fun at Toyotas, and of course, hearing about how fantastic Wickender's bypass is in Toyotas, then this is the podcast for you. That's right, ladies and germs. My name is Tyler, and this is episode 344B. Or 344 part two.
Yeah. I don't know how I'm going to label it.
Yeah. Whatever it is. It's
Probably
the second,
part two.
It's the second one. Okay. The second episode here.
Yeah.
And joining me here in the studio before we get back into the 4-person camaraderie here, historical lesson, is Mr. Jimmy Jett. How are you, buddy?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. Yep. I'm excited for part 2 here.
This is a massive chunk of the trail. So it's going to be a good section, good 2/3 of the trail, but half of the podcast.
Yeah. I think this section, we start talking about it. And this was after we had dinner and wine and whiskey. We've kind of been hanging out, chatting for a while.
Isn't that a podcast?
No.
Dinner, wine, and whiskey?
Probably, since, they don't really go wheeling too much.
Right.
So.
Okay. Yeah. We physically took a break after we recorded up to Little Sluice, and then John made us an outstanding dinner.
Yeah, he did.
And then during dinner we had some wine, and then after dinner we sat down and started this recording and had some whiskey in our hands. We might be a little bit more jolly.
Yep.
But we did realize we needed to scoot along, and so we continued down the trail a little bit. Let's do some quick housekeeping since we did it all in the last episode on Monday. Let's see. Gift box tiers closed. The giveaway for the extreme tire repair kits will maybe happen on Wednesday or Thursday. It might be too soon. We'll see what happens with Patreon. The giveaway for the Jim's Month is the 3-drawer toolkit from WRINCH, which is an outstanding toolkit. Comes in, retails around $500-$600.
Nice.
That's up and available for you guys. And the last thing I have on my mind is episode 350. We're doing listener questions, and there's a Google form link down in the description where you can ask your questions.
Nice. I like it.
All right.
The only thing I have is I'm waiting for another Toyota Land Cruiser badge from Dan.
I thought I get the other one.
No. One's going to go on the 4Runner and one goes on the Ford. And then when I get the Bronco, I'm going to need a third one, Dan, just FYI. So if I ever get the Bronco.
You should put them both on the Bronco. That'd be fun.
That would be funny. Oh, man. Anyways, I don't have anything. So yeah, go check out all the housekeeping stuff. I'm really interested to get back into this episode and learn some more. So let's do it.
Absolutely. So This is starting from here. If you didn't listen to episode 1, we covered the Wentworth Springs entrance and the Loon Lake entrance all the way up to Little Sluice and $1,000 Hill. And so here we are continuing down the trail from more or less Little Sluice, Merlin's Table, and heading our way out through Rubicon Springs and out towards Tahoe.
Yeah. I think the first stop we get to make here is we get to stop and say hi to Glenn.
Hey, Glenn.
So I guess without further ado, let's go and stop and say hi to Glenn and then work our way up to Tahoe here. So grab your favorite drinks, grab your favorite beverages. Today, I think we're just drinking some C-. Although I guess we are drinking during this. We're drinking some whiskey and wine. So
yeah, you had some Rubicon whiskey.
I did have a Rubicon
I
rye.
had some bourbon from Texas. I don't remember the name.
I don't remember what John poured for himself.
Oh, Jefferson's Ocean.
Oh, that's right. Because we were talking about that.
And Merlin had a glass of wine.
He had some 2017 Zin from Amador Cellars. So, all right, man. Everybody else, grab your favorite drinks, and we'll be right on back with the rest of the trail. We're past Little Sluice. We're past $1,000 Hill, right? Past Mud Lake. So the next spot we're looking at is really the Top Indian Trail, right?
No, Arnold's.
Oh my God! How did I forget this?
Does that V rock have any significance?
It just is called the V rock,
and I don't think it's a V.
Yeah,
yeah.
And I don't think anybody finds it difficult or
yeah. It's just a good landmark. It's an easy point.
Yep.
So, okay.
Now
all right. I'm moving on to Arnold's.
We could talk about Lost Trail. No. Okay.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about Arnold's Rock now.
Okay, because Arnold's Rock.
That one has a great story behind it, and why it became to be known as Arnold's Rock.
It came to be known as Arnold's Rock because a couple of brothers, Mike Arnold and Kenny Arnold, used to rock roll it, and during Jeepers Jamboree, they were the rock rollers, and those. Kenny passed years and years and years ago. Mike's still kicking, and he doesn't Jeep anymore. He's well into his 80s. How old is he? He's older than you.
Yeah, a little bit.
Probably 86 or 7 or somewhere in there.
Probably a good guess. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and he's, he doesn't, it's too physical for him now. So he doesn't Jeep anymore. But I'll tell you, the last time he did Jeep was 3 years ago on Jeepers Jamboree. They had a mix up with a cook at Buck Island, and his son Kevin called him and said, "Dad, can you cook at Buck Island?" And he said, "I guess I can." And he wheeled in and cooked it and ran the cook crew at Buck Island at age 84. Yeah.
Wow.
Or something like that. I'm not sure.
Oh my God.
But it's close.
Wow.
Anyway.
So that's Mike Arnold.
That's Mike Arnold.
Wow.
Anyway, they used to,
that's cool.
The two of them used to rock roll that spot, and Kenny used to stand on top of the rock and kind of run the show.
Nice.
So it got to be known as
Arnold's Rock.
Yeah.
Right.
So was the main point of through that section through the two big rocks, was that always the main line, or was it usually around Arnold's Rock?
It was around Arnold's Rock.
Okay.
The route between the two big rocks has only existed about 10 years.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
And then there's new routes kind of now going up those ledge of that side and around the back end. So yeah. Okay, so around Arnold's Rock.
So around Arnold's Rock, and then from there we get to the shitter with the best view in the world.
Best view Cooper ever.
What's the story behind that one? Was that
did you guys put that one up too?
Did you test it before you put it? After you put it in?
I did put it up, and I can't remember. I had volunteer help, and this is horrible. I had volunteer help, and I can't remember who it was. But I should.
But you're right. It has the best view.
It does. It has a good view. It's got a hell of a view there. Yeah. So we got that one. And then from there, we're getting into Indian Trail, kind of the top of Indian Trail, right around there where Old Sluice kind of kicks off and where Glenn's office is now.
It was Placer County Crawlers helped me build that shitter.
Oh, really?
Nice. Was it?
Yeah. Took me a minute.
There we go.
Anyway, Glenn's office.
Yeah, Glenn's office there at the top of Indian Trail.
Was that when Eddie was president?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, cool. Sorry.
No problem. I was just taking a drink of my Rubicon whiskey here. So, all right. So we got now Glenn's office.
Yeah.
Right there parked under that tree. And pretty much right in that area there is where Old Sluice splits off and Indian Trail starts and heads down the slabs down towards Buck Island.
That's correct.
So was that always a split there, or was Old Sluice always kind of an optional part of the trail?
Old Sluice was the original trail.
Yeah, it's got about 3 different names. True Sluice, Old Sluice, Big Sluice, original Big Sluice.
Original, I was going to say there is a big sluice.
That's the way that from Glenn's office, where the road now splits, and the road goes to the right, it goes up past Chappie's Rock.
Chappie's Rock.
Mm-hmm.
And right near there used to be a road that went down to the left and down to kind of a little ridge down to, I call the Indian Trail the Slabs Trail. That's what I always.
And I'm doing my very best to call it the Wickender bypass.
Well, right. It became Wickender bypass, but most people didn't call it. And I don't know. Oh, I guess you know why, but Indian Trail, I never figured there was any real Indian trails that area. And so I never understood why they called it Indian Trail, but I know you got a story on that.
Did we talk about this in the last podcast?
We may have.
I think we brushed the surface of it.
But it's a great story. We can do it again.
Okay, well, whatever. the Indian Trail, what we now call the Indian Trail, never really was an Indian Trail, and Indians would never traverse that. There's no reason for them to be there. There's no water. There's no flat ground. There's no.
It's a difficult trail to traverse on foot.
Yeah, there's be no reason for them to be there.
Yeah.
So it was not an Indian Trail, but during the Jamboree, the trail went through Old Sluice up until the 70s, and one of the rocks in there is Chappie's Rock. It's named for Gene Chappie, who was a U.S. senator and contributed a lot to the trail. I think we talked about that the last time we did this. And he was rock rolling there. Gene Chappie was rock rolling there at Chappie's Rock, and that was his usual spot. And the Arnolds were working Arnold's Rock, and the traffic was backing up. And one of them ran forward and came back and said, "That damn Gene Chappie, he takes so long to rock roll people. We're never going to get off this trail tonight. We need to do something." So they routed them all down the Indian Trail, which is really the Wickender bypass. And they routed them down the Indian Trail, and they got into Rubicon Springs that night. And Gene Chappie was fuming. He said, "Well, you can't send them down there. And he was going off on them and telling them what they could and couldn't do. And he said, "You have no right to send them off trail down there." And Mike Arnold, who's is an Indian, said, "Oh, don't worry. We're allowed to do that. It's an old Indian trail. It's sovereign territory."
Sovereign territory.
I don't think it made Gene any less mad, but that's how it got the name the Indian Trail.
Yeah. So it's the original Wickender's bypass.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
You think so, Merlin?
Yes, the slabs. Yeah, the slabs is the Wickender, where Victor Wickender laid out the route for his Model A.
That's right.
Got it. Yes. Where did Vic Wickender? He had some land down at Buck Island, right?
Was
that him or?
Well, there's different stories. I think he had a 99-year lease from the Forest Service. He got that just in early 1900s.
Mm-hmm.
And that was for an island. And he built some buildings on the island, a boat ramp and so on.
Okay.
But anyway, he lived on that. Sometimes I'm kind of getting ahead a little bit, but sometimes he lived there year round. Sometimes he went back to Oakland where he lived with his wife. Sometimes she's wintered in with him. She spent time there with him.
Which is really remarkable if you think about it. Wintering in
at Buck Island.
With
a Model A.
Got there in a Model A and couldn't leave till a Model A could drive.
Yeah.
And so they were probably there for
a bunch of months.
At least 5.
Yeah.
Probably 6.
Yeah.
By themselves, nobody.
Wow.
But back in those days, they still had vandals and burglars and people like that to contend with. And I don't know if we talked about it the last time about how he left the island when he'd go to town.
I don't think so.
He would paddle across the island in a boat, drive into town, Georgetown, right?
Well, yeah, he would take the boat from the island and take his wife. They'd paddle across and let her out at the Model A. He'd row back, tie the boat up on the island. Then he would swim from the island back to shore so that anybody coming by would have a more difficult time going out and burglarizing his cabin.
Getting back to the island. Wow. Impressive. So the Wickender's bypass is what a lot of people refer to as the Indian Trail down the slabs around Old Sluice. So Old Sluice was the original part of the trail. And so is that the original sluice box then of the trail, or?
I believe it was because, and the only thing that makes me think that is that one of the names for it was, or the couple of the names. One is the Old Big Sluice. I've heard people call it that. And I've heard people call it the True Sluice. Like the ones we have are not the true ones.
And one of the names is the Original Sluice.
Original
Sluice. Okay.
So it's got 3 or 4 names.
Okay.
But I'd figure if it's the old sluice, then it predates the other ones.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. So yeah, I think it's the original Big Sluice.
Okay. Nice. So as we come around, both of those sections, we've got Old Sluice kind of comes back down, drops in at the bottom of Wickender's Bypass, Indian Trail and Wickender's Bypass comes around and meets Old Sluice down at the bottom there, right before Buck Island. Anything in between there that's worth mentioning?
Well, there's I'm gonna mention the RTF property.
Absolutely
is there. So for those of you who haven't wheeled Granite View Loop, it's an experience. It's fun.
Mm-hmm.
It has a couple of difficult spots and a couple of tight spots and a couple of scary spots. And it's just fun. What I like most about it is the view you get of the Rubicon. It's like looking at I've been looking at the Rubicon for more than 40 years. And the first time I looked at it from out there, it felt so odd and different and unique because you're looking at it from a different angle. And it's like, it was just super cool to me.
Yeah.
So that's my pitch for Granite View Loop.
Well, there's something else on that area, and maybe you can help me out. I can't remember the family. Somebody lived, as you're going down the true sluice, you get about halfway down.
Yep.
If you walk off to the south, there's still two things out there. There's a mattress, the coil springs from a mattress. And last time I remember, there was a cast iron wood burning stove.
Really?
Yeah.
And I can't remember who lived there or what
I don't know either.
That story. I'd have to think about that.
If you recall, about probably 10 or 15 years ago, I found that stuff and asked you if you knew, and you said the same thing you just did just now.
Oh, okay. I guess I never knew.
So from Old Sluice, True Sluice South is where you can find that stuff.
So Old Sluice, about halfway down Old Sluice on the uphill side of the.
I was going to say pretty much south of Old Sluice is like hill, Granite Hillside.
It's between the trail and the Granite Hillside.
But there's a real sharp corner as you're going down the True Sluice. There's a real sharp corner to the left. As I remember, just right in that area is where you start walking southerly and maybe a little bit southwest.
You kind of walk off the end of that corner.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
That's about it.
I have to go check that one out now.
I went back to find it and it took me almost half a day to find it. It's all overgrown. It's hard to find.
Wow. Okay. All right, cool. So we got the Old Sluice, we got Wickender's Bypass. Now we're coming up on Buck Island. What's going on with Buck Island?
Well, there's a couple of new toilets there.
There are
new toilets.
Yep.
Plus the ones that the RTF has there.
There's this side of Buck Island. There's a trail that goes up to the.
Sorry, I want to go back real quick because I totally just realized we glazed over it. The RTF loop, the Granite Loop.
Yeah. Well, we talked about it.
We talked a little bit about it, but I just want to, reconfirm it is a freaking amazing trail. You guys did an awesome job at signing the trail, at making it so that if people don't go on and get the GPX maps like I did not do before the trip, you can still get through there just fine, going either direction of the loop. And it's, like you said, if you have a short wheelbase vehicle, there's some scary spots in there.
Yeah, it can pucker you up.
Yeah. So yeah, kudos to RTF. I thought that was really cool getting to do that for the first time last weekend. I've been wanting to do it for a while. Finally got to do it, and it was a lot of fun. So,
well, yeah, we're super proud of it, and we didn't. When I say RTF didn't buy the property. To our primary purpose in buying the property was not to put a trail in. And really, it's just an access road to allow you to go out on the property. Our reasons for buying the property was to have a stake in the trail and to sit at the table.
Yeah,
and we thought then, and we think now it's even more important.
Yeah.
So the Granite View Loop is a byproduct, but it's a hell of a byproduct.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty cool.
And we're excited about it. We're proud of it.
Yeah. So, sorry, I just wanted to go back and touch on that because I thought that was really freaking cool getting down there and seeing that whole loop. So, all right. So now we get up to Buck Island, with the new bathrooms there. We got lots of great camping at Buck Island. There's, I don't want to say a couple of play areas because they're not really play areas.
There are no legal play areas.
No, you got to stay on the trail there. A lot of people do play there, and it's unfortunate because it's going to bring a lot of heat to the area.
Yeah, it's detrimental to the trail and to the lake and now we're even seeing people driving because Buck Island's so low, we're seeing people driving in the lake bed, and it's unfortunate.
But aren't there 2 stub roads going off the Rubicon Trail, going over and dead ending at the lake that are approved?
Yeah, there are.
But not marked.
Correct. Yes, it's hard to know which one's which, and the county and the forest haven't put their heads together on that.
Oh, okay.
So when I was up there, we were up there doing the glue tread trip that we did. We camped overnight at Buck Island, and I went out hiking in the morning and found a spot in the middle of kind of the point that protrudes out towards the middle of
towards the south end of the lake.
Yeah. And right on that point there we found 1,000+ rusted nails.
Were they square?
Some of them were square. A lot of them, it looked like they had been just pulled out of something. Like they were all bent in almost a 90. And we filled 3 water bottles full of them. We just sat there and picked up a ton of them. They're all super rusty. So I'm curious, was there anything going on kind of right there on that little point on the southern end?
Not that I'm aware of.
I don't know. No. I don't know where Vic Wickender launched his boat from or landed it.
They had
I suppose that's possible.
He had a boathouse right on the same island where he lived.
Right.
Okay.
And on the island, he had a boathouse. I've seen pictures of that. It's a winterized type place where you
it had a roof and
a place where
pull the boat inside.
Okay.
But I don't know of any of the pictures I've seen and the stories I've read. I haven't heard anything in the area where you're talking.
Okay.
I don't know of anything building construction there.
Yeah. Interesting.
Did he have a pier of anything that he would land on shore with?
I don't know. Not that I know of.
No.
Huh.
I wonder, it makes me wonder if somebody didn't
clean up
take their blow up raft over to the island and pick up all the,
and then just dump them when they go back down.
Yeah. So what happened to his buildings was when Smud, put the dam in the late 50s, somewhere in there, between 1948 and 1964. And I'm guessing the late 50s.
Okay.
Those specific dates are when they began and ended the that portion of the Upper American River project. So I know it was somewhere in there. When they did that, when they shut the gates and started flooding the lake, the Forest Service had already told Vic Wickender, you have to leave. Your 99 lease, your lease is not over, but if you look in the fine print, it says you got to go when we want you to go. For a higher purpose or whatever. So he had to go, and when he left, they burned those buildings.
Interesting.
So I'm wondering if they burned those buildings, the nails were left. Somebody took their blow up boat out there and gathered up a bunch of nails and brought them back, and
just dumped them at the south end.
This had to be after 1955, I think.
That could be,
because I talked to a lady, and her son is also a wheeler now, but she lived there in the summer of 55. Had a babe in arms, and who now is grown up and he's a wheeler. But she was living with some friends for the summer. I think it was 1955.
Okay.
Wow.
So and like I said, I don't know exactly when it was, but it would have been somewhere in there.
But during the construction of dams and so on, the construction people, they do build buildings for the purpose of their construction.
Okay.
And then they tear them down. I know they did that in different places around.
Yeah, it definitely looked like the nails had been taken out of something. Like they took a hammer, a claw, and pulled them out of whatever it was, but then they just left them all right there, right in the water's edge.
I don't know.
That point, it was interesting because it was just such concentrated in that one little 10 foot of shoreline. Anyways, I thought that I could ask, and maybe you guys might know. I was curious.
Nope. That's my best guess is it came off the island.
Okay.
There's a trail on, what would you call that? The southeast side of the lake. Where does that go? A hiking trail.
Oh, it kind of goes over around the southeast side of the lake, and then it basically goes over. I've hiked it. It goes over to the
inlet
stream of of buck, but don't try it when the water's high.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You come to a dead end where you have to wade through 2 or 3 feet of water to get back to for hundreds of feet.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So at low water, it'll take you to the inlet stream from Rockbound, and then up. It's once you get to the inlet stream, it's a very short distance to Rockbound itself.
Oh, interesting. That's
quarter mile.
Because it would be. I was always thinking it'd be nice to go to, because that inlet stream from Rockbound Lake is it at like waterfalls or cascades down into Buck Island Lake. So I always thought it'd be nice to go there, but you probably, when the water's flowing, the lake's high, and you're saying I'm going to have to traverse some water to get there.
It kind of depends on the outlet.
Okay. So
the only time it really is a problem is when the water's really high, and the only time the water's really high is when the tunnel between Buck and Loon can't handle the flow, and water gets high enough to get up and overflow the top of the tunnel. Dam.
Oh, the dam. Okay.
Since I've been playing around up there, it's only happened twice that I know of.
Well, these waterfalls are very noisy. You're talking about coming in Buck Island, because from Spider Lake in the springtime, you can hear those when there's no wind, like first thing in the morning. You can hear those waterfalls going into Buck Island.
Oh wow!
Yeah, right from the lake.
Wow.
Yeah, they're nice.
I never noticed that.
So there, what was the name of the hill right there coming in? So you come down into Buck Island Lake, you cross the creek, and then there's these 2 little roller hills.
Revliment Hill or Mini Soup Bowl?
I've always known it as Mini Soup Bowl.
No,
I've also heard of it as Schneebly's.
Yeah, you guys are all wrong. It's Schnebley.
Schnebley?
No, I'm kidding. It's not.
We're joking about this because on the Top Gear episode, the USA Top Gear episode, they decided to name that obstacle.
They did.
And does that obstacle, has it ever had a name?
Not that I know of.
Yeah. Okay. So they put a name to it, which was quite funny. So we've been joking about that the whole time.
Yeah. So they named it Schnebley Hill. And when I watched the episode, I was like, Schnebley Hill? Never heard of that. And I kept watching, and I kind of got to know the Top Gear folks a little bit. And so I watched the credits. And when I watched the credits, one of the producer was named Schnebley.
Oh. Is that it?
So that's how it got named. It got named Schnebley Hill by the guy who wanted to name it after himself.
That's hilarious. Cool. So,
man, I'm glad we don't do something like that.
Yeah, right.
Snail Hill.
So heading over the dam, there's a little ramp there that people like to kind of hit the rev lever or go up. And then there's tree line. There's a bunch of options for people to go up on tree line. Is there a specific route that people should go? Yeah,
tree line's not really legal. It's when I say not really, it's 100% not legal.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So none of those routes through there are legal. The legal route is off to the left. The 2 kind of undulating rocks that are always covered with sand, and they're really a pain in the neck. They don't look hard, but they are.
Yes.
And people don't like to go that way, so they started taking the other route. When we see people travel off trail, about 10% of the time it's someone looking for a challenge, and about 90% of the time it's someone looking for an easier way.
Yeah,
it's somebody who's
because my understanding of the tree line is that it's all the way far to the right next to the tree, climbing a huge rock, but nobody can really do that. Only crazy rigs could do that if it was allowed.
If it was allowed. And it used to be kind of doable, but it's so undercut now, it sucks you into the tree and you can't do it.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't.
Yeah. Sounds good. From there, my understanding is the trail previously or used to go straight.
The trail, no.
Out towards the lake.
No, it didn't. Not there.
Okay.
From there, it follows generally the edge of the lake, until you get to the point where it used to go into the lake. I'm trying to think how to describe this.
Yeah, it's hard.
There's a camp where after you go over a few undulations, there's a camp to the right that's in the trees between the trail and the lake.
Mm-hmm.
And just out of that camp, there's a spot where there's a very hard climb to the left and an easier trail around the right. And the trail around the right now has a gabion, wire cage filled with rocks and it has a bunch of rock on top of it. So
this is the Smud bypass.
That's the Smud bypass.
Okay, and what we jokingly call Lee Hill,
and what you jokingly call Lee Hill,
where our buddy Lee ran straight into the hill head first.
Okay, and so from there it used to shoot out.
So yeah, it actually used to go through that. The trail used to go through that.
Through the trees
by where that camp is.
The camp area. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I went through the trees and you went down by the edge of the lake and through the edge of the lake. And then we decided it was probably in the 70s, huh, Merlin?
I think so.
Yeah. In the 70s, they Smud. If you look at the Buck Island Dam, you can see the cold joint between the two cement lines where they raised the height of the concrete on the dam.
Mm-hmm.
And when they did that area flooded. And Merlin and I were talking earlier about how it was kind of treacherous. And we were
trying to get a rig through there.
Yeah, we weren't in rigs nearly as capable as they are today.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway.
But the trail was underwater when the lake was up. So you knew you could see ahead, you could see where your trail came out of the water. And you had to go, if you're going eastbound, you had to travel with your left tires real close to the up bank. If you didn't pay attention, you drifted away from that bank a little bit, like 18 inches, your right tires would fall off the cliff. Not a cliff, the ledge.
Okay.
So you'd be high center there in the water.
Huh.
So there were many people that at one time or another went, 6 inches to the right or 8 inches to the left of the line. And when you did, you would high center and you'd have to get out and wade through the water to pull your winch line. And there were no anchors. You had to figure it out.
They didn't have the foresight to realize that by building up the dam further, they're just going to put the trail underwater.
Well said.
They didn't care.
I guess not. Jeez. Yeah. Okay.
They wanted more water.
Yeah, they were in the water business, not the jeeping business.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Interesting.
So Don Spieler told me this. He's a should I call him old? He's an old Cal 4 guy, still around, lives in Georgetown.
Mm-hmm.
Good man. He was in Cal 4, maybe not from the beginning, but his dad was, I think, from the beginning, and he's been a Cal 4 guy for many, many years. And he told me that that Cal 4, that the Forest Service didn't like people going through the water and threatened to close the trail. And Cal 4 kind of jumped in and said, well, it's not our fault. It's Smud's.
Yeah.
And Cal 4 and the Forest and Smud came to the cooperative agreement that Smud would pay to reroute the trail.
Some of that mitigation stuff.
Yeah, it wasn't back then. It wasn't mitigation money. Okay. It was just, hey, you knuckleheads, you got to fix our trail. You screwed it up.
Okay.
So Smud took the lead on that, I guess, or did the work to reroute it. So that super steep spot on the left for when I started wheeling the trail was the only trail.
Oh.
And no, when I started wheeling the trail, we were in the water. But at some point in the early 80s, the Cal 4 and Smud did that bypass, and then the only trail was that steep section, rocky piece on the left. And over time, it got eroded and incised, and now people go around to the right, and that's the trail. And actually, that's both trails appear on the easement, and the county just improved 5 years ago, maybe.
The lower one.
Improved the lower one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nice. Cool. Yeah. So after that, we've got coming up on, I never know how to describe this one. It's a sharp S turn, kind of as you're leaving Buck Island, just as you're coming up to Margarita Tree.
Mm-hmm. Although I call it Martini Tree.
Martini, that's the one. Sorry. Okay, Margarita, Martini, whatever, same thing.
Dam road closed.
Yeah, the dam road closed tree.
Yeah.
That Coffman Corner he's referring to?
He's referring to Coffman Corner, yeah.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, so that spot has a name then. Coffman Corner?
Yeah, it's named for Bart Coffman.
Okay.
Oh, and I don't know if it, does it really have a name? I don't know. All these are kind of, these are like Whitewater Rapids. It's the traditional name from somebody started calling it that.
Yeah.
When I was young and first started wheeling there, Bart Coffman was a rock roller for Jeepers Jamboree and then a guide for Jeep Jamboree USA. And he
worked that corner.
That was his corner.
It is a difficult corner.
Yeah.
It's sharp, especially because my truck's it's long. Mine's 127 inches wheelbase. So it's, I got to climb some of those rocks to get around that corner.
Yeah. You got to climb hard with your left tire way up on that wall to do it.
Yes.
He actually climbs the inside rock on the passenger side.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a fun route.
Yeah.
Hasn't given me any problems yet.
Not yet. Yeah. I'm just barely the right wheelbase to squeeze in between the two rocks, but I wedge myself in there to get through.
It seems like back in the 90s, Jeep Jamboree USA had a whole bunch of international runs through the Rubicon.
Mm-hmm.
And Bart Kaufman was the leader. He's the one that done the trail orientation meeting when they were at Hot Rock area.
Okay.
And they had two guys at a Jeep that would be out front rolling rocks.
Mm-hmm.
But Kaufman was always in the lead Jeep. And so when he got to what they call Kaufman's Corner, he would pull aside and get the people through. So he got a reputation that he worked that spot.
Nice.
And sometimes he'd work that like twice a week because they'd have two different groups a week coming through.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know what their biggest year was, but I remember a year when Rich Daniels told me he worked 22 corporate runs in Rubicon alone.
Wow. Holy crap.
They ran 22 separate trips in Rubicon. And that was in the late 80s or early 90s.
That was in the 90s.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a lot of runs. That is a lot. That's a lot of time on the trail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those guys used to do
us combined this year.
Yeah. I was going to say, I did 8 weekends this year.
I did 7.
7. Yeah.
Those guys would do 2-day runs with people from all different kinds of countries that many didn't speak English.
Mm-hmm.
They do a 2-day run. And will you tell them what they did, Merlin? You were there.
Yeah, they'd come in one day, get in Rubicon Springs, have dinner in the evening. Next morning, they'd head out to Tahoe. So if they were from Thailand, for example,
mm-hmm.
people getting over here from Thailand don't have jackets. So jackets, heavy clothing have to be provided.
Mm-hmm.
People from China, Thailand, stuff like that, when they get over here, they'd wear masks. And we think that until we start talking to them and asking questions, we think they're wearing masks because of the dust. They wear masks all the time in their home countries.
Yep.
Just because of the smog.
The smog.
That's a continuation of when they get over here.
Mm-hmm.
So to them, that's just what they do.
Yeah, it's part of life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And when they come over here, it's a kind of reward program Chrysler had for their people who work for Jeep in these different countries. Anyway, the Jeep Corporation would tell the people from a certain country, you do a good job, and next year we'll take you to the United States and run the Rubicon.
Maybe the Rubicon.
Take you to Disneyland or someplace and ship them back to their country. But it was a reward program. So a lot of people were very eager to get here.
Mm-hmm.
I remember one night at the dinner table, we had a group in there, and I don't remember what country they're from, but they didn't speak English, so they had an interpreter. I got talking to the interpreter, and he was telling me that, he said, you see that guy down at the end of the table? He'd never driven a vehicle before in his life until he got to, because two of them started out per vehicle at Tahoe.
Okay.
One of these guys drives down to Loon Lake, then they put the windshield down, they have their little orientation, then the other guy gets behind the wheel and drives in. The guy that got in Loon Lake and drove into Rubicon Springs.
Mm-hmm.
Had never driven. He rides a bicycle to work all the time.
Can you imagine your first driving experience being on the Rubicon?
Yeah. This is the steering wheel. There's gatekeeper.
Yeah. Have fun.
Here's how a clutch works.
Yeah.
Wow. That's intense.
The Jeeps that they used were Chrysler Jeeps. They were loaned to Mark Smith Off-Roading.
Mm-hmm.
And he would keep them for 1 or 2 years and then turn them back in. And when they first started getting them, he would get quite a few of them with a stick shift, and most of them were manual. I mean, automatics.
Mm.
Because when he took a group of reporters in, they always wanted to be able to drive both of them.
Yeah. And see the differences?
Yes. But now when you had people that didn't drive very good in the rocks and so on, found out that you got a lot less vehicle damage if they were driving automatics.
That makes sense.
Uh-huh.
Wow. Okay.
Wow.
So what's the story on the Martini Tree?
Yeah.
I don't think it has a big story that I know of. Yeah. It's just a place people stop. Someone must have stopped there traditionally for a martini.
Yeah. And there used to be signs, dozens of signs on that tree. People would bring a sign from home. They'd climb the tree and put signs up, all kinds of signs, until finally somebody took a picture of that. Some environmental went in a national publication showing all this junk stuff on all these signs on Rubicon Trail, and they had some work parties went and took most of those signs down. I think there's still one sign up if you look.
One sign up there.
As far as I know, there's those signs were all over the Rubicon.
They were everywhere. Yeah.
If you look back in the old pictures, the little sluice tree probably had 30 on there. Not a lot.
And the big sluice, right at the big sharp corner.
That's right.
Going down on the left, there were signs all up in the trees there.
Remember the phone booth? Remember there was a pay telephone nailed to a tree there?
I don't remember that.
There was. I have a picture. I have a picture of stainless steel Dave, like he's answering the phone.
Oh, okay.
On Big Sluice.
On Big Sluice, just right at the hairpin. There was somebody got a payphone from somewhere and screwed it to a tree, and like it was ready to make a call.
Well, I know we used to have one of those phone booths down in Rubicon Springs, and there was a phone in there, and somebody put a coffee can in there for coins when you tried to make a phone call. It wouldn't go anyplace.
See who would go in there and try to make phone calls.
This is the collections.
Anyway, I don't remember the one up there. I'd have to think about that.
But those signs were all over the Rubicon.
Yeah.
And as far as I know, there's two left. There's Dam Road closed, and there's Airport.
But you asked about the name of that. I think that name came about because that's where people would stop and rest. They'd take a little break there. And maybe instead of having a beer, they had a martini.
Yeah. It's a great spot to stop and take a rest too. You kind of work your way through Buck Island, and then you're like, hey, there's a nice little wide area there
with lots of shade, and you look at Buck. And
yeah, great spot to stop before you head down into the gully, into the valley of Big Sluice. So as we head down into Big Sluice, there's I guess a couple of different trees that have been in Big Sluice that are no longer there now. But did Big Sluice get its name just because it was the next sluice box from Old Sluice, and it's just another sluice box for the Rubicon Trail up in Gold Country?
I have no idea, but it feels like marketing to me.
Right.
Well,
like when Old True Sluice fell off the map as a route, they had to name something Big Sluice, and they named it, I don't know.
Well, Big Sluice is bigger in fact that it's longer.
Yeah.
It's longer than the other sluices. So maybe they should have named it Long Sluice.
Long Sluice. Yeah.
Maybe we'll rename it now.
There we go.
Here we go.
We'll Schnebley it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So shortly after Big Sluice is Sawtooth?
Sawtooth is at the bottom of Big Sluice, yeah.
Okay. And is there any significance around that?
Just the shape of the rock.
Jagged rocks there.
Jagged rock as you come down it, yeah.
Okay.
Or up it, I guess, whichever way.
Yeah. But that's before there's like another, like kind of a few tight turns, and then either a V rock on one side of the trees or a drop off on the other side.
Kind of a lateral ledge.
A lateral ledge.
The trail.
Yep.
So that's those sharp rocks is what I would assumed that Sawtooth was. But this one now it's
where that gabion is that.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And it's semi tame now. Was it worse back in the day?
It used to tilt you hard downhill as you dropped off of it before that gabion was there. And it was, I know of a couple of rollovers there, and it was kind of sketchy because there was, if you rolled there, you're going to roll two times.
Roll a little bit.
You're going to go a little bit, but I don't think there was anything dramatic.
Okay.
It felt real sketchy going over it. Before the gabion was there.
What about that spot with the kind of lateral ledge and the V-notch over on the right side of the trail? Does that have a name? Is that a named obstacle, or do you guys call it anything?
I don't think so. The next thing that I would name something on the trail would be Scout Hole, right?
Well, the spring, just before you get to Scout Hole, there's a spring on the trail. It's a wet, springy area, and that drains down into Scout Hole.
I don't know. I've never heard of Scout Hole. I've heard of the next one I've heard of is Property Line.
Okay. So Scout Hole is named that because, well, it's the wet area that for probably 100 feet or so, you're driving in water that's 6-8 inches deep, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And it has a drainage off in the meadow on the downhill side.
Mm-hmm.
So in the late 70s, someone abandoned a Scout there.
Yeah.
And over the years, everything got stripped out of it. And somewhere around about 1986 or so, somewhere in there, it got removed. I think the Jeep herders removed it, cut it in quarters and took it out in trailers.
Yeah. Jeep herders had adopted the trail, the west
the
side
entire
of the
trail. Yeah. Everything.
Oh, wow.
So
the whole thing.
They removed most of those.
Up into Rubicon Springs. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And if you remember, there was another Scout. What's the theme here? There was another abandoned Scout over by Ellis Creek. Do you remember that?
No, I remember someone on Wentworth side. I don't remember the Scout near Wentworth.
It was near Ellis, but
Ellis,
no. It was between Ellis and the newly named
a long time ago.
Friends Creek.
Friends Creek.
Yeah. It was the early 80s. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Nice.
Anyway.
Okay.
It was, I guess the old guys call it Scout Hole.
Yeah. Okay. So Scout Hole is that little marshy spring area right before Property Line then.
Yeah.
Yep, that's
okay.
it.
Yeah. All right. So after we get through Scout Hole, we have Property Line.
Yeah.
Yeah. That one's a fun obstacle. That's one of my favorite ones on the trail.
I remember when it was a driveway.
Really?
Yeah. Before, have you ever wheeled that in winter or early spring?
No.
So in the spring, next time you go down there any time of the year, look at the flow line from the water off the hill. At the turn at the top of Property Line, the water comes in and it exits at the end of Property Line. In the spring, it's 2 feet deep. And it looks like
a river going through there.
Yep.
Wow.
It looks like meat grinder.
Oh, geez. Did you do a lot of whitewater rafting, John?
I have a fair bit of whitewater rafting history.
Oh, okay. I never knew that about you.
We'll talk.
Okay.
Yeah, this isn't the episode, boys.
What's
And Property Line means that you're leaving, when you're going eastbound there, you're leaving Forest Service land and you're going on Rubicon Springs property.
Yep.
400 acres they have down there.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for bringing us back, Merlin.
Thanks.
Okay.
Good work.
John and I are going to go off whitewater rafting here soon. So, cool. So Property Line, you're right through Property Line. You're coming right up on the bridge now, the Rubicon Springs Bridge. There's a really cool plaque up there as a kind of memorial. And a thank you for everybody that helped get the bridge out there. And then you're getting like really into the springs.
Do you want to hear some bridge history?
Heck yeah.
Okay. So the bridge was put in there it was a wooden bridge.
Okay.
And it was put in there by the county in the original one, I believe, in the 20s.
Well, the 47 is when the steel one went in, I think.
That's right. It was just after the war.
I was thinking 39, but I don't know.
39 was when the second wood bridge went in. The first one went in the 20s sometimes.
Okay.
And then it got washed out. And then in the right before World War II is a really interesting transition time for the Rubicon.
Mm-hmm.
Before World War II, there were. Did you ever hear Rich Daniels tell his tow truck story?
Yes, I have.
Tell it.
Well, different ones. His dad had a tow truck in Georgetown, and when he would get a call to come on the Rubicon, Rich Daniels was a young lad. He would ride with his dad until they got to Wentworth Springs, and then Rich Daniels would get out and play around there and just mess around there for a day or two, and then his dad would take the tow truck and go in. But
he stopped at Spider. He let him off at Spider.
Oh, he had done that too, right? Because I remember Rich said yes, he'd done that. But when you're a tow truck driver and your kid, teenage or younger kid wants to go, I'm sure you let them off different places, different times. But anyway,
wherever they jump off the truck as you're driving.
So you had something in mind, I think, about the end of this.
No, not necessarily.
Oh.
The point is that, yeah. So the point is Rich Daniels used to come in there in a 2-wheel drive Dodge pickup
and tow
with
people
his
out.
dad and tow people out. So, and you think, well, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But it's not. It was a 2-wheel drive road.
Uh-huh. it was the route from Sacramento up to Tahoe.
It was one of the routes. 80 barely existed, and 50 with the Johnson cutoff was the American River Road.
Yeah.
And Rubicon was a road too. Anyway, so it was so easy to traverse that you could go in there and pick up a car with a Dodge two-wheel drive truck and drive on the dirt road back to Georgetown and pick up your kid at Spider Lake on the way home.
But when they had all these two-wheel drive cars going in there, the Stars and the Studebakers and so on, that road was called Lake Bigler to Georgetown Wagon Road, which Lake Tahoe used to be called Lake Bigler after a governor we had.
Wow. Yeah.
So, but then again, a lot of the two-wheel drive cars would carry ropes and planks. They'd carry planks on top of their car. So when they come to some real obstacles, they put the planks down, drive across the planks, get on the other side, put the planks on top of the car, and keep on going.
But that was generally a washout. It was, in general, the road was designed for two-wheel drive.
Rocks, right.
And
sometimes
rocks,
they had rocks.
Yeah. So
are you saying they were the originators of the Max Tracks?
Not quite.
Okay, good.
I like it though. So that being a two-wheel drive road up until 1939, it had a wooden bridge crossing where the green bridge is now.
Okay.
In 1939, this Hitler guy kind of tried to take control of the world, and when he did,
changed a lot of things.
He changed a lot of things, and in America, what he changed was, now when we have a war, we borrow more money and go fight a war. Back then, when we had a war, if we didn't borrow money, we tightened our belts and we didn't use rubber tires and we didn't use gasoline, and things were rationed, and people had even wealthy people had no ability to take a vacation or take leisure time to go to the Rubicon. And even if they had, they ethically and morally wouldn't have, because they're taking away from the war effort when they do so. So the trail was incredibly sparsely traveled from 1939, 40 until the end of the war in 46, 47. So it really didn't get traveled at all, hardly. And so Mother Nature took its course in that 5-6 years. And when people came back from the war, what did they have that they didn't have before?
A lot of surplus military Jeeps.
They had Jeeps. So now the squeaky wheel gets the grease. All those people that were clamoring for road repairs were like, well, I'll just take the Jeep.
Yeah.
And it really got no maintenance at all between the end of the war, when they put the Green Bridge in 1947, the entire trail got almost no maintenance except what was done by volunteers until the 2000s.
Wow.
And two different dates come to mind about the first Jeeps. I heard it was 47. Also, I read where it was 1949 when Victor Wickender was had a guest, a medical doctor, had been staying at his place. And they heard a noise that they didn't recognize. And they went out, and this was in the morning, and they saw a Jeep going by. First Jeep on the Rubicon Trail. That might have been a family by the name of Liddicoat from Georgetown. They were one of the first ones to go through there. But anyway, that same day, they heard another noise. They went out and looked, and the second Jeep was going by.
In the same day.
In the same day.
No, it was 1947. And we think that was the first four-wheel drive vehicle on the trail.
I've seen some reports where they reported it was 2 years later, but I think it was 47.
I believe so too.
Interesting. And that was when the bridge was put in, so then people could get to the springs.
Right. So both wooden bridges washed out, and the county put in the metal bridge in 1947, the one that still exists.
So all those plaques,
the green one that's there now is the one that was put in 47.
Yeah, it's been rebuilt 3 times, I believe.
Okay.
That's what I was going to say. What that plaque on the wall with all the
that was from the 1978 rebuild. It was rebuilt in 78, 92, and 2016.
Wow.
And when I say rebuilt, they didn't. No one really did anything to the metal portion at all, and no one did anything to the concrete until 2016. But
they redid the wood.
They tore all the wood off and put all the wood back on. And in 2016, added a bunch of concrete because of the wing walls were designed for 1947 flat fenders.
Yeah.
So they were too narrow for today's vehicles, and people were dropping tires off the edge and causing damage. So the wing walls got put in.
Nice. All right. So that's some fun bridge history.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. From the bridge, we then get it down into the springs, the heart of the springs.
Okay. Well, I'm going to set my mic down because
this is Merlin's territory.
I was going to say, we have the springs specialty right here in the house on a microphone. Man, where do we even begin with the springs, dude?
We covered a lot of the history of the springs in the last episode. And I think we're primarily covering sort of the obstacle names on this episode. So, I mean, maybe we should brush the surface of the springs in case somebody didn't listen to it, but go back to episode 220 if you really want the history of the springs. Should we leave it there?
A fair way to put it. Why are the springs called Rubicon Springs then?
Well, they're first called Huntsucker Springs.
Okay.
The two bachelors that first lived down there and built a cabin were Huntsucker brothers. And they built a place down there where they lived. And there's springs there, mineral springs, soda water springs. But anyway, they're called Huntsucker. Place was called Huntsucker Springs. And then someplace later on in life, then it became Rubicon Springs.
Okay.
Maybe after they sold it to the next owner, but
okay. I'm looking at the map here. I have the RTF PDF map pulled up right now, and there's Rubicon Reservoir, Rubicon River, Rubicon Springs, Rubicon River that comes around over there. Was that all named at the same time, or was there?
I have no idea when it was named.
Okay.
The Rubicon.
I was going to ask. Either. I got a stupid question to ask. Why Rubicon? Do we know why the name Rubicon? Does that have any influence or any?
Yeah. Do you know what the original Rubicon was?
No.
So,
Caesar?
Rome. In Rome, I don't want to get my facts wrong.
There is a Rubicon River.
And there's a Rubicon River in Tuscany.
Okay.
And there was a Rubicon Pass in Tuscany. And I'm not going to name anything I'm not sure of. So some emperor was holding someone hostage, and they had some big thing. And Hannibal, who was a general, who's one of Caesar's generals, had elephants. And he said, well, I can take my elephants over that pass and I'll punch through there and go after those guys. And everyone said it was impossible, and Hannibal crossed the Rubicon.
But that means point of no return, Rubicon.
That's what that means?
Because when they had armies, if a country wants to capture another country, they send their army out, and they have all their supplies. And once they get to the point where they've used half or a little over half of their supplies, they can't go back. So now they know they have to go forward.
So that's their Rubicon point.
That's their point of no return.
Point of no return. The Rubicon point.
Then you have to go forward.
I do that on the Rubicon.
I wonder if that's...
Every time I look at my gas gauge going, okay.
So I don't know if that was applied when some people named this the Rubicon area. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Or if that's more an offshoot of Hannibal and his elephants.
Could be.
I don't know.
Yeah. Interesting.
You get to a point where you don't have enough feed to go back, so you got to keep going forward.
Right, not enough animal.
Yeah,
not enough Elk Grove going pellets for your elephants.
Okay, and let's see.
The more you know. Wow.
Well, they had as you approach, you go past property line, you get down in the flats, you're getting close to Rubicon Springs property down there, the buildings and so on. There was a long mud hole called a mud hole that is just deep, and it gets people stuck. And years ago, they had Toyotas that were running, a lot of Toyotas run on Jeepers Jamboree. And there's a lot of competition between Toyota and Jeep drivers.
No, there's not.
And so right next to that long mud hole, people would just line up on the rocks above. And they would cheer and boo their their Jeeps or their Toyotas and so on. But there was always it's kind of like up the big switchback on the big sluice. Okay. People would get up there, and during the jamborees, we'd have a couple musicians, Chip Gash and Bob Renfrey. They'd go up there, they'd walk up there during the day, and they'd play the banjo and guitar and so on. And people would boo if their vehicle got stuck, just like it was down at the mud hole.
So back in the day, people would intentionally come to jamboree on the Thursday. They'd be, don't come on the Friday. That's no good. You got to come on Thursday. And on Thursday, you got to hike up to the hairpin on Sluice. And in those days, there would be 200 people.
Lots of people. Yeah.
Standing around
hanging out the hairpin.
Yeah. Heckling.
How do you put that much people right there?
They were stacked up.
Jesus Christ.
That's why they had music. That's why these two guys would hike up there and play music.
And it was a party.
Oh, wow.
People had coolers full of beer and margarita mixers and they would heckle the Jeeps. The Jeep people that came in on Friday got heckled at the hairpin.
That's cool.
Every time.
That's great. So same thing happens at the mud hole then.
Same thing happened at the mud hole.
That's fantastic.
It was fantastic when it was, and remember Mark Smith used to fill the mud hole. He'd get a pump and a hose and pump out of the Rubicon Springs and pump water into the mud hole to make it muddy.
Yeah, that was part of the trip. People look forward to that. And in the mud hole, it was kind of thick flowing mud, but it seemed like there were 2 or 3 rocks that would get you if you didn't know where they're at, because they're under them. You had to know where they were at during the dry season and commit to memory where they were at. Because if you're trying to get through there on these tracks, you smack those rocks here, hung up, and then it's trap time.
It's like meat grinder, John.
It's like meat grinder. You got to memorize the rocks. Really more like troublemaker.
Yeah, troublemaker, definitely.
And I'm super excited about that because in later years that really became a bone of contention with mitigation and siltation as the water was running through the Mark Smith created mud holes into the river. But they're all gone now, and that's all taken care of. And we'll move forward from that. But
there you go.
I'm sanguine.
Do you miss them?
No.
Oh,
I'm sanguine about the history, and I'm sanguine about it being gone.
Gotcha. How far from kind of where the camping starts in Rubicon Springs today was the mud hole?
100 yards, 150 yards.
Oh, it was pretty darn close then.
Yeah, it was kind of right there in the middle of town.
Okay. Perfect.
Right now, when you get through the mud hole area, there's first you see an outhouse on your left.
Okay.
And just past that outhouse, right next to that outhouse, is a road to your left that goes in the gate to what they call Smutville. So, and right across the street from that on the right side is where people start camping. So, 100 yards would be.
So between the Heckler's Hill turnoff and Smutville.
Well, Heckler Hill is just to the east of.
But the turnoff for it is kind of right there.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Heckler Hill. That just Heckler Hill is a
remember
bypass. Again, they had people out there booing and cheering, and depending on what you're driving.
So as you're approaching the springs in the camping area, the trail kind of splits right there, and there's a kind of a narrow cutout in the granite that you can go through on the left, and then on the right hand side, it kind of goes up and around, then drops back down and meets the other trail on the other side. Is that anything? Is that anything in particular? Or is it just kind of like, pick your poison and go through it and we'll meet you in the springs?
Well, that notch in that narrow spot you're talking about, I got a snap button on the top of my Jeep on the right side for my soft top. And I wore that off different times by rubbing on that rock just a little bit. And that is just past the turnoff that goes in to the 8 acres where the stone cabin is at.
Yeah.
But as far as significance,
well, that is the original trail, more than going through the notch.
Going through the notch on the left.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, that's
it's quicker too if you have the right size vehicle.
It is quicker if you
actually. I go through it in mine, all the time, and you just got to miss it. And you miss it by an inch. The trick to that is to get close to the wall that you hate. If you try and go outside of it, tips you up and you hit it.
Yeah. And say we talked earlier about the rock and whale bones that people call rainbow rock. I was like, I think I've seen more paint and colors on that rock in the Notch as you're approaching the springs than the rainbow rock.
I would agree.
Yeah. All right. So cool. We got we're into the springs now.
Yep. We're leaving the springs now, I think.
We're leaving.
Right? Yeah. I guess. Sure.
So as we're leaving the springs, there's a bunch of stuff kind of as you're coming out of the springs. You've got Dirty Dozen on the left. You've got a pet cemetery as well.
Well, not really.
Kind of.
There's one dog buried there.
Okay.
That officially is called Sid's grave.
Okay.
One of the founders of the Jeepers Jamboree, a guy named Sid Mainwaring. And he got to have it called Sid's grave because a lot of times after the Jamboree, the cook crew, the committee crew, and so on, they went out the day after all the other people went. And so Sid liked to have a beer now and then. And so when they would get to that spot, Sid would get out and lay down there and said, when I die, I want to be buried right here. And he'd hold his beer up and take a toast. Well, when he died, his family put a memorial there. He is not there.
Okay.
His ashes are not there, whatever. But for a long time, there was just one memorial marker. And then somebody else got another one. And then finally, somebody buried a dog named Maddie.
Yeah, whose dog was Maddie? Do you know?
I used to, don't recall.
I don't either.
But anyway, Maddie is, last I knew, that the only animal
buried there.
Oh.
Yeah, from my understanding, everything that's kind of there now is all memorials to pets that have been lost on the trail somewhere. So for some reason,
that's for people,
but pets and people
as well.
Okay,
yeah, that the Sid's grave was the only grave there on my first trip.
Oh wow, cool.
So backing up a little bit there, because Dirty Dozen was before that. Then there's the campground with the waterfall, then the granite slab. And are those have any names or any significant reason why they're named those? Like it's just
Rocky Point.
I mean, Rocky Point's, I guess,
Rocky Point, the slabs, Pine Grove.
You're talking about when you come across Miller Creek and you turn left at the intersection?
No, he's talking. He's talking about the slabs below main camp, but above Dirty Dozen.
Oh, well, they get different reasons, camp names for different reasons. Like Flat Fender Camp, that's pretty self-explanatory. Different groups of flat fenders will park in there, park together.
Where's Flat Fender Camp at?
It's kind of at the top of the of that big slab that goes down to the water hole where the swing is.
Okay,
and I don't think it's been called Flat Fender Camp for a long time, but there was a group of folks that ran Jamboree that had really, really nice flat fenders, and they all camped there every year.
Okay.
And of course, the Dirty Dozen is named that after the club.
There was a club named Dirty Dozen?
There still is.
Oh.
So the club named Dirty Dozen has been in existence for probably 40 years.
A long time. I think they use it a lot. They've done some improvements. I think they built that fireplace in there.
They did.
So anyway, got their name.
Okay. Where are they based out of?
I don't really.
Placerville.
Yeah, they're Placerville.
Okay.
But I think they have two primary activities. Wheeling into the Dozen camp for their big trip and wheeling out of the Dozen camp for their big trip.
To leave it.
It has a reputation of being a pretty good party.
Okay.
And I think that's about all they do now is that trip.
Wow.
Some sticks to my mind. They've only got like 12 members. They have not many members in the club, but they have a big mailing list of people that go on their events.
Their events each year. Okay.
I think you're right. I think a member has to leave before a new one can come in.
I mean, that would make sense if the name is the Dirty Dozen.
Right.
So that's true. I didn't even think of that.
Maybe that's it. Okay.
Wow.
Too funny.
So there's a bunch of different camps around the Rubicon Springs that kind of have different names, different heritages, different historical value to them. I think it's kind of cool. You just kind of got to go exploring around the Rubicon Springs and, figure out where the little campsites are around there. So.
Wranglerville and the Cook Crew Camp and Rock Roller Camp Committee, the Committee Bar. Yeah, there's a bunch of them.
There's a lot of them. So,
well, those two you mentioned are right by Rubicon Springs itself, and which is just off of the trail from the caretaker's cabin. It just
right there,
100 yards east, and you go through the mud, and that's where the Rubicon Springs is. It's hard to figure out. It's not like it was 100 years ago, but just south of that is where you have these camps for the committee and so on.
There's I guess we're traveling backwards now into the springs.
Yeah, we did.
So when you're at the caretaker's cabin, there's the big rocks to the south of the cabin, just barely. Right. And then there's campgrounds just back in those
kind
rocks.
of behind there in that meadow.
Is that what, does that have a name?
That's a rock roller camp. It used to be committee camp.
Yep.
And then if you head up, there's, up the rock slab, there's a road that shoots back out towards the stone cabin.
That's okay, yeah.
But is that's
Heckler Hill?
That's Heckler. Oh, that's Heckler Hill?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
there's a few camps back there. Did that area have a name?
Yes. That's where the Jamboree special trips used to stay, and they call that Wranglerville.
Yeah, Wranglerville.
Okay.
With a W?
With a W.
Yes. And if you wanted to
Wrangler will.
Yeah.
And garbage dump. There's a big old garbage dump up there. All kinds of tin cans and so on. You get up in Wranglerville, there's a little meadow there. And if you're on the south side of that, if you want to go dig through some rusty cans, have fun.
I didn't see that.
I never saw where that is.
No. Yeah, it's a pile.
Really?
Huh.
Oh.
Well,
I missed it.
Check that out next time. Yeah, because that's where we stay up during Rubathon.
And I don't think any of those cans are newer than 50 years old.
Oh, they're back from when they had the resort in there. But
yeah,
over the years, people like myself have taken trailer loads of ashes from the fire pits and dumped them on there. So it's kind of a nasty proposition. Trying to get it covered up.
I'll avoid digging through that then.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, it sounds like a trip to the hospital for a tetanus shot.
Okay, so let's head out past the cemetery. Let's continue on.
Sid's grave.
Sid's grave. Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there, and head up towards Cadillac, is there any specific obstacles from Sid's grave to Cadillac that should be mentioned, or points of interest?
Obstacles, yes.
I don't think they have names though, do they?
No,
I don't think so.
I was just thinking of that root section before you get to the real hard
the hairpin.
Right, hairpin to the right.
Yeah,
just where the old Cadillac was at. But I don't recall any names right there.
Sure.
Me
okay.
either.
Well, shall we talk about Cadillac Hill then?
Yeah,
sure.
Is it truly a Cadillac on Cadillac Hill?
Yes.
And no.
Are there multiple?
No, there's only one.
LaSalle.
It's a LaSalle.
Isn't LaSalle a Cadillac?
A sub-brand of Cadillac?
It was a brand that merged with Cadillac, and they became they became synonymous.
Well,
okay.
So yes and no.
Yeah.
I can tell you a couple stories.
You got me.
I know your next question is going to be, how'd that Cadillac get there? So I'll tell you the story that I think is the closest to the truth.
Good. I'd like to hear it. I haven't heard this.
Rubicon Springs was a resort.
Okay.
A lot of well-to-do people went there. I think from Chico, California, there was a medical doctor that went there different times, took his family. One weekend, the medical doctor had to go out of town for some reason. So his teenage son said to his teenage friend, "Hey, Dad's going to be out of town for a few days. Let's take the car and go to Rubicon Springs." So they did.
Okay.
But they didn't get all the way home. For some reason, they broke down and they got off the road there. And I don't know the rest of the story, but that's how the car got to be there.
Gotcha.
Teenage son of a doctor.
So it wasn't jumped off the cliff and
at observation point came
nothing
down.
Spectacular.
Actually, you can still see enough of it to see that it was backed down. There's a What's left of it now is a frame and one fender, and it's a front fender.
Yeah, you are correct. Because when we found it and we went and sat in it, and took pictures, and we were definitely facing upwards. And we were like, "Oh my god, I can't sit here."
But I think it was all that's left is a frame and one fender. Correct?
There's pretty much. I wanted to say that you can see the axle shafts of the rear. And that's, I want to say that's how we figured it out.
All right.
So,
there's not much there at all.
But it is surprising. It's right there, right off the trail.
10 feet.
Yeah. I had not seen it before the listener run. I had not found it. And then we decided, hey, we got some extra time. Let's find the Cadillac now, the LaSalle. And
it was super visible in the 70s, 80s, and probably into the 90s. But in around the 1990s somewhere, it got grown over, and it got really, you couldn't even find it.
And more rocks went off with more traffic. More stuff sloughed off the edge of the road
and covered it up.
Sometime in the late 90s or early 2000s, somebody went in there with loppers or whatever and cleared a bunch of the brush out, and you could see it roll.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
I don't know who did it, but you can see it pretty easily still.
Yep. You can see the front leaf spring for that held the axle to the chassis. So it's still there.
Did you get blisters from that?
Wasn't me.
As we're making our way up Cadillac, we've got a couple of fun obstacles. One is the V-Rock.
Yeah, and there's kind of two pieces to that. There's lower V and upper V.
Oh, I didn't realize there was two pieces to it. Okay.
Well, from a rock roller's perspective,
I guess
there's two.
That makes sense.
The lower one is after that, what's now a field full of
chicken wire and rock.
Well, it's actually fence.
Yeah,
it's chain link fence and double head cobble, and that leads up to lower V. And once you get up there, you're right into upper V.
Mm-hmm. And then from there we have the waterfall.
Well, I got a story about the V-Rock.
Okay.
Right.
I love it.
Right at the bottom of the V-Rock, it was pretty rough getting on the V-Rock. And one year, just before the jamboree started, we had a work party going in there, and we're going to pour some cement.
Mm-hmm.
So prior to this, we put a sign up at the top end. We put a sign down the bottom that due to road construction, we're going to be closing that trail for a short while. We had some people down in Rubicon Springs mixing cement, and the helicopter had a big bucket and a big canvas bucket, and they could pull a lever and it dumped the whole bucket at one time, whatever. But anyway, he made a few trips up, and here comes a little red Jeep coming down the hill, one guy in it, and he comes right down. He'd gone past our sign up top of the hill.
It wasn't a red Wrangler with a guy in it and a girl holding onto the roll bar behind him.
I didn't see her there.
and it wasn't Steve Morris, right?
No, it wasn't Steve Morris. But anyway, this guy came down there, and he was a nasty guy. And when Mark Smith would get in an argument with somebody, his face would get red. Well, it didn't take long. Mark's face got red because this guy wanted to go through. He couldn't understand why he couldn't go through the trail. And Mark pointed out, see all this fresh cement, it's clear across the road and so on. But anyway, this guy was insistent he was going through. So Mark gets on his radio, and he called the pilot in the helicopter and says, are you all coming back yet? The guy said, yes, I just lifted off. I'll be there in 2 or 3 minutes. Mark said, okay, when you get here, I want you to dump your load in the back of a red Jeep that's parked right at the top here. The pilot says, in the back of the Jeep? Mark said, yes, I want you to dump it right in the back of that Jeep. The pilot, Mel Kane, says, okay, Mark, if that's what you want. Now, this guy is listening to this. The guy that has that red Jeep listening. He hot-footed back up there and got in his Jeep and backed up the hill.
Did you ever see him again?
No, I didn't.
The funny thing about that is that Mark would have done it.
Oh, yeah.
He would have done it.
Yeah.
Consequences be damned.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, there's a lot of stories about trail, but I just happen to think of that one.
There's a lot of stories about
that
Mark.
area right there.
Yeah. That's great.
That's a good story.
Yeah.
That's funny. There's still quite a bit of, maybe more concrete now than there used to be, but there's still a bit of concrete right there. I guess that would be lower V.
That'd be upper V.
Is that upper V?
Oh, okay. Actually, there's a lot of concrete now in lower V as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It, sad to say, I've ran that section not as many times as I've ran the rest of the trail, but I I ran it twice this year, and it seems easier than I used to remember it being.
I think it is quite a bit easier. So it's kind of a safety,
absolutely
ease of travel balance.
It used to be quite off camber to the downside of the hill where you're looking down a ways. And so it didn't seem nearly as bad in the last 5 years since I've done it last. So I've always wheeled to the spring. I used to just wheel to the Springs and be like, well, there's only Cadillac left. I'll turn around.
Did he just say 5 years?
Yeah. Well, like there was a 5-year hiatus where I didn't wheel Cadillac.
Is that called a newbie?
No. I would only wheel to the Springs and turn around and go back. And I haven't wheeled the Cadillac in 5 years. Yeah. Okay. I've been on the trail for more than 5 years. It was 6.
5.5. Oh man. So
it's cool. Going up from the waterfall section to observation point.
Yeah.
Is there anything?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So the waterfall section, what you're calling the waterfall section is really, to my mind, is Morris Rock.
Okay.
And it's named for Steve Morris. Steve Morris is a historical figure on the trail. Was an historical figure on the trail.
Was he the I would say the founding president of Cal 4?
He was.
Yes.
Gotcha. Cool.
Sure was. And he lived in Sacramento, but had a place in Tahoe and wheeled in and out that side of the trail many, many times. And he was an owner of Rubicon Springs.
Oh, wow.
And was he ever on the Jamboree committee? I don't think he ever was.
I don't know. I don't think so.
I don't either.
But yes, there's something very important right in this area. And before we talk about it, we need to back down the hill a little bit, just before we get to Sid's grave.
Okay.
Just before we get to Sid's grave, you come across Miller Lake.
Miller Creek,
right. You come to the T intersection and you turn right to go to Sid's grave. The trail used to not go that way. The Rubicon Trail came out to that T intersection and you went to the left. And you went to the left a little ways and you circle up at the top and you start circling to the east. Okay, now we'll get back on above the V rocks.
And up to Morris Rock.
And it came out
above this.
It came out at the hairpin there, correct?
Above that. When you go past that hairpin where you make a hard left going out and you make a left, you're climbing up.
Okay.
A lot of times you'll have water running in the road right there. And you follow that water up until it stops running out onto the road. Park right there, and you'll see everything is on your right is all green and lush. That is where the Rubicon Trail used to cross. You can't see it on the left side, but if you get out and you walk through that little green lush area there, that's 1/4 of an acre. But walk through the trees there, and all of a sudden you can see the trail continuing east.
I've been wondering when we were out, I think at Rubathon coming out, somebody had mentioned, no, it wasn't. It was Brian, tour guide Taco. As we were coming out of the listener run, he said, yeah, the original trail used to come back and up right here.
Yeah.
And he said, it's somewhere in this area right here. And we were trying to find it and we couldn't see it from today's trail. But you're saying if you got out right there and kind of hiked around and went out there, you can find it.
There's a group of trees. As you sit there and it's marshy, wet on your right, maybe not real marshy, but it's wet. Just walk through that a little bit. Walk through the big trees, right through the center of them. And right past that, you'll see limbs on those trees. But up until 20 years ago, I know different people that would go that way. It's a steeper climb out. And it follows closer to Miller Creek.
I never went that way, but I did drive off the end of that turn, the turn below where you're talking about, and you could connect.
Oh, it did go up there also.
Yeah, and it would. Okay, and we would drive up that, and it would save you 10 or 15 minutes where it reconnected to the trail up by,
right on top,
by above Barker OHV turnoff.
Yeah, where you're really close to Miller Creek.
That's right.
On the flat.
Where that kind of just this side where that big water hole is.
Yes.
Yep.
sign way up in the tree. Been there for 40 years. Trying to think of what it says as you're going into the Rubicon Springs from Tahoe side. But anyway. That's where you came out.
Yep.
Nice.
Okay.
And that was before travel, way before travel management. And in those days, there was really no rules about, prior to 1994, there were really no rules about staying on the trail, and you could drive where you wanted in the national forest.
And right at that location where you're really close to Miller Creek, there's another important thing there. There's a trail going across Miller Creek.
Okay.
Very easy to cross. No problem at all. You're going almost straight south. And you'll see it's been logged. And you just continue south until you get to a bluff. And that's half, 3/4 of a mile. Okay, the other end of that road is if you go into the stone cabin and you go around past the outhouse, you circle to the east, and you start climbing on the other side of that little creek, the stone cabin, and you get back up there east a little ways. It's what I call Rubicon Park. It's a very beautiful area, one of the most beautiful areas in that area. And it's got so many 6 and 7 foot diameter sugar pines, different pines, etc. One day I was riding a quad through that area, and it's beautiful. I mean, it's low grass, hardly any bushes. And I'm going easterly up this canyon. I look off to my left, and I see rock work in a diagonal, the base of a road. I was kind of below it. You can see where they stacked rocks to make a road.
Okay.
And I'd never seen that before. So I found the entrance of it just up the road a little ways. And I started riding on that, but it wasn't long before I came to a 24 foot diameter pine right in the middle of it.
24 inch.
24, what did I say?
Foot.
Yeah.
That's a big pine.
I was like, that's a big
24 inch.
pine, man.
And it was a pretty good sized pine. But back in the day when they cut hay and sold hay out of Rubicon Springs, they made that road and they hauled hay from the meadows, Timothy hay, because there was a big demand for hay because there's so many horses and so on coming and going on the trail. But anyway, they came back around the stone cabin, went up to this, what I call Rubicon Park, got on that handmade trail. But I walked up there a ways and I couldn't even walk any further because the brush was so thick. A lot of times on hillsides, brush doesn't go straight up. Brush will start up, but then as winter snows push it, it kind of lays on the slope. But you had a hard time just crawling through it. But you could see where it was graded. And if you get to the top of that grade, you're going northerly, zigzagging up, switchbacks. You get to that road that I just mentioned, you're coming into from where John was talking.
Interesting.
And that road on top is a good road. I mean, it's flat, just rolling a little bit. So it's not.
I've been back in that area, but didn't know that road was there. I know the park you're talking about with the big trees.
Well, next time you're on a jamboree and you get in a helicopter ride, talk to the pilot about just flying that area.
They don't do that anymore.
Oh, that's right. They don't do it anymore. But anyway,
they're funny that way.
But when you get in a helicopter and you fly and you can look and see where they cut the road and it grew back, it's a little bit different. It's discolored from the native brush right alongside of it. So you can see where that goes right up the hillside and makes a switchback and goes up.
Nice.
Next time you're back while we're on the subject, next time you're back in the stone cabin, if you go further about a quarter mile, keep going up the road back into there, you'll come to really, really big meadows full of Timothy. And that's where the huntsuckers were cutting hay up there. And if you think about it, people supplying hay to Tahoe, their choices, you can't really, there's no place to really grow hay in Tahoe, but there's this big industry up there, tourist industry up there, and everyone rode carriages and wagons and whatever. They didn't have cars. So they needed hay for their horses.
Big demand.
So if you're not getting it there, you're getting it out of Carson Valley. It's way closer to Rubicon Springs. So what seems like a really daunting road, the Rubicon Trail, to them was the easy way.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Wow.
Is there a legality to go to the stone cabin?
Yes.
It's private property.
It's private property. So courtesy would say that you talk to the caretaker down there and request permission. And
okay.
Well, that's like somebody going in your backyard without permission.
Sure.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And
People do it without permission, but
you should.
That'd be the thing to do.
The best thing is to talk to the caretaker and ask if you could hike out there.
Yep. And I don't think they would have a problem with it, but
Probably not.
But it's nice to ask.
Yes. Okay. Cool. Thanks for explaining that.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of neat. I would love to go out and find the Hunsaker's fields.
Yeah.
It won't take much.
Yeah.
You'll walk out and go, oh, this is it. 'Cause it's you're in the forest and then you're in a giant acres and acres of Timothy grass.
Down before you have from the caretaker's cabin to get to the stone cabin is probably 3/4 of a mile, half to 3/4 of a mile, and you're going through quite a few meadows there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
100 years ago, those meadows were a little bit bigger because over the years the trees keep encroaching. So I know over the years I've cut out a lot of trees in the meadow just to keep the meadows
maintained. Yeah.
so they don't get completely taken over.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I'm gonna have to do that next time we go into the springs.
Yeah. We'll ask
But a
permission.
mystery for you.
Yeah.
If while you're walking back there, you got to remember that when they put up hay, they had hay equipment. There's a rake back there, a hay rake.
Huh.
And there's also a hay mower, that you pull behind a tractor or a couple of horses.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you'll find them someday.
Didn't know that. Didn't know that.
That's what we get when we ask the original Rubicon Springs caretaker, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That's cool.
How long were you the caretaker there, Merlin?
14 years.
That's a bit.
Yeah. It's a good amount. Well, cool. We made it up to observation pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Anything special about observation other than it's just a fantastic lookout of the trail and the region you just came through, the topography of everything?
That's about it, I think.
Yeah.
No, some people like to park there and do cliff climbing just to the east of there.
Oh.
If next time you stop there at observation, look at those bluffs just to the east.
Okay.
And maybe you'll see somebody going along the side of it.
Okay.
It doesn't happen very often, but people do get over there and climb.
Nice. Cool. Is there anything special about the road out to Tahoma?
There's a couple of things in there. Do you remember, I wasn't around, but I've been told about it. Will you remember when a helicopter landed up there and was there for a few weeks?
A few weeks?
Yeah, it was a military helicopter.
Oh, geez.
No, I remember when they were giving rides off of observation and they had a little crash. Worst injury was the pilot got a broken little finger.
Yeah. So
that was Rufus.
Before my time.
Okay. Anyway, no military. I don't remember anything about a military.
So past observation by probably half a mile, the area opens up pretty dramatically and you're in a bunch of scrabbly rock out there. And I was told, who told me that? Might have been Al Richter. Told me that at one time a military helicopter made an emergency landing there, and the guys just sat there for a couple of weeks waiting to get it fixed, and they finally got it fixed and flew it away. So he used to call that area helicopter flats.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, I know where something like that happened over in Mount Auckham, and they stayed there for a week before the military got it off the ground again. But they flew in their security people.
Mm-hmm.
And so we as tourists couldn't get close to that military.
Yeah, he said that there was somebody there the whole time.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, as you're continuing on the trail just past Helicopter Flats, your last climb out is a kind of a steep climb.
Mm-hmm.
And as you're going up that last steep climb, you make a little bit of a left. You start out easterly, you make a left, and you start going up northerly.
Mm-hmm.
There's a large pine tree on your left, and it's probably got one or two signs on it. One of them declares who the owner of the property was at that time, and it was Sierra Pacific Lumber Company. Sierra, like the railroads.
SPI? Not SPI?
No, not that.
Predecessor to SPI?
Was it?
I would assume predecessor
Maybe
to
Central
SPI, but
Pacific. Okay. I forget. Maybe Central Pacific.
Okay.
But anyway, a little K tag, what they call a location poster that shows the 36 sections, but it had the name of the landowner there. So,
okay.
in the 1860s when they put the railroad in. Railroads, got a lot of land, every other section for 12 miles each side of the railroad right away.
Okay.
And so that took them clear back in Rubicon Springs. So when the Hunsucker brothers first got in there and settled on that land, they didn't homestead it. They just squatted on it because they didn't own it.
Yeah.
The railroad owned it, but nobody knew that at the time because it had not been surveyed.
Okay.
So anyway, but that marker, that K-tag is kind of a historical marker on the tree. A little yellow 4x4 sign.
Neat.
And that's why there's so much private property up there, is because
the railroad.
Yeah.
Because of the railroad.
Yeah.
Wow.
The railroad owned it because Congress gave it to them to give them timber to build trestles. And then that passed into,
as they sold it off.
Well, they went bankrupt in the 70s and had to sell it all off, and it ended up in the hands of lumber companies who went bankrupt in the 90s and had to sell it off, and different private property owners ended up with it.
Wow. That's cool. It's a good thing that happened, because that gives us some a say in the table of the whole area.
Seat at the table, a secure foothold.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. Nice.
Well, that was...
I got one more spot we should talk about.
Okay.
So 14 and 39 leaves the trail to the west of Miller Lake, and it goes up on top of Sourdough. And if you take that trail out, the old Veer Camp cabin is still standing there. It has a tree that's fallen through the roof, but it's there. You can see it there. It's on Veer Camp's property, but it's not posted. You can kind of walk around and look at it. It goes by Richardson Lake, 14 and 39 does. And there's a warming cabin that I think it's probably Sierra Club for skiers there at Richardson Lake. If you continue to follow the trail, it goes to the top of Sourdough, and Sourdough overlooks the Rubicon, and it is by far the best view of the Rubicon.
Really?
By far. I
keep hearing a lot of talks about Sourdough, and I've never taken the time to go up there.
Most people haven't. But if the next time you're leaving the trail in daylight,
go make a trip to Sourdough. It's maybe a half hour off the trail and a half hour back. Okay.
It's a great place to have lunch or to look around or watch the sun go down or whatever.
Okay.
It's an amazing view. I'm interested. I'm there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds great.
Yeah. I have a few things now on my to-do list next time we're down on the trail.
Right? There's so much.
I know.
Don't wait 4 years like you did with Granite View.
No. Yeah. I gotta rebuild my rig here. So
I hear you.
Well, cool. This has been really freaking amazing. It's a really long episode. We're probably going to split it in two. But there's some really, really cool history there. Some really cool schneblies that got pulled out from everything. And I think it's going to be a big hit. I think people are really going to like it. I'm really excited that we get to take this knowledge that you two gentlemen have, and we get it out to people in a fun, consumable way in the podcast world. So thank you so much for inviting us up here, John.
My pleasure.
Yeah. And thank you, Barb. Oh, she went to bed, it looks like.
Yeah, she did.
Okay. Well, thank you, Barb, when you listen to this, for letting us take over the house for a while. And thanks, Merlin, for coming out. And
my pleasure to share.
Absolutely. So really cool stuff. I'm really excited to eventually see some of the stuff that you were talking about earlier that you carry around with you, some of the pictures and whatnot. So, I guess, I don't know, Jimmy, anything else?
No, just, I want to reiterate what Tyler was saying. Thanks so much for sharing and being able to sit down with us for a bunch of hours today, especially. It's always a pleasure to sit down with you guys. It's we learn so much. And I hope that, everybody listening to this is learning a lot about the history of this iconic trail as well. It's really awesome for you guys to share that. Thank you.
You're welcome. It was fun.
It's good to sit here and reminisce.
Yeah, perfectly said. So I guess with that, final words from everybody. Jimmy Jet, final words for everybody out there.
How do we get some of these obstacles named by Toyota people?
Merlin, any final words for everybody out there?
No. Hope they enjoyed the program.
Awesome. John, any final words?
It's coming. Pick a land use cause that you can get behind and support it monetarily with volunteer hours and with your time.
I love it. And with that, my friends, keep crawling.
I got one for you.
Mm-hmm.
What does garlic do when it gets hot?
I don't know.
It takes its cloves off.
Okay.
I had a hard time saying that one.